Hi there. As you can see from the title of this video, I'm going to talk about homelessness in Canada. If you watch my other videos or whatever, you can see I've gone from living on a boat to now living in an RV. So how does that relate to being homeless? First of all, let's talk about the stigma. Do I see a bit of stigma to what I'm doing right now? Absolutely. And you know what? I'm a guy who's been solvent and worked pretty much my whole life. I've had periods where I haven't had a job or whatever. You know what? I'm 50 years old. Jobs come and go or whatever. We do our best to keep them, but sometimes companies fail or move elsewhere into other countries or whatever. Talk more on that later. But these things happen. But by and large, I've been solvent the whole time. I was just thinking about this earlier, but I've had a bank account with the same bank, same account for 35 years. I have a very good relationship with my bank. They don't have anything bad to say about me. I've had loans, mortgages, car loans, line of credit for renovations on a couple properties over the years, a condo and a house. So I've you know what, I've played all that game before or whatever, and I still work with my bank. I like them. They do a good job. They've always answered the phone when I call them and whatever, and that's better than most businesses here in Canada. A lot of times you call a lot of places and you don't get anything, but anyway, beside the point, I have a good relationship with the bank and stuff like that. So why do I suffer from a stigma? Well, it's interesting. Before, when I was living on a boat and I told people I live on a boat, I live on my sailboat in the marina or whatever, they're like, oh, cool, whatever. Now when I tell them, oh, I live in my RV, it's a van, I live in a van, I'm a guy living in his van, totally different outlook, like, oh my God, they're horrified, right? Like, what happened kind of thing. It's like, no, I do this out of choice, and I do. Like I say, I've got a decent job right now, actually a job I really like. Probably keep this one for quite some time. Really healthy, gets me lots of exercise, and pays pretty decent, so I'll probably stick at it unless something really horrible happens. Hopefully it doesn't, so leave it at that. Anyway, so do I see a bit of stigma doing this? Yes. And there's really no reason for me to do it. It's just there. Imagine what it's like to be somebody who's actually out on the street that doesn't have a job, what it's like for them. How do you get out of that mess? And the one thing I really hate to see is the not in my backyard syndrome that stops the solution to so many problems. I really, really don't care much for these people, to be quite blunt. I can say some really, really nasty things, but I'm not going to. I'll keep my mouth shut, other than to say I really, really strongly do not like these people. Here in Victoria, just lately, they had a place set up for some homeless people. They were well on their way to getting everything organized. And the last I heard is the community rose up to try and stop them. I was absolutely disgusted. Just disgusted. And that's what we're up against. Now, in another city here in Canada, the mayor solved his city's homelessness by providing housing. How he managed to do this. And you know what? I'm sure the funding, finding the spot, all the logistics was probably a lot of work. But the real work is dealing with the NIMBYs. That's the real stopping point. So many things get up to a certain point, and either the NIMBYs or private industry stops it. Private industry, how does it stop it? Case in point, I'm pretty sure this was private industry that blew this one out of the water, but over in Vancouver, somebody proposed micro-housing for the city's homeless. And immediately it was poo-pooed as a temporary solution. My goodness, are you guys joking? Basically what I think it came down to is developers couldn't make money off of it, therefore they found a way to block it. Absolutely disgusting. Just disgusting. I live in a space that would be smaller than what they were proposing as micro-housing for these people. You know what? These people need a safe, warm, clean place to live. That is the starting point for overcoming their problems. And I'll hit this again in a minute. What can't you have when you're on the street? First big one, if you don't have a brick and mortar address, you can't really have a bank account. I don't really see a way around this one. I tried really hard. I tried using a P.O. box, and I couldn't do it. They wanted to do it. They wanted to let me do it. I told the guy over the phone, hey, I'm living in my RV. Oh, yeah, but where are you living? No, I'm living in my RV. I just kind of go wherever. I've still got a job or whatever. That's still going. Or whatever. I just shower in my RV. It's got a bathroom. It's got heat. It's got everything I want. He's like, oh, that sounds so cool. It is, thanks. So, on we proceeded to try and change my address to my P.O. box. He couldn't do it. Talked to his supervisor, couldn't do it. That's like, I had to have a brick and mortar address to use. Now, fortunately, I did have one as a backup plan. Otherwise, my bank account information would still have me as in being a completely different province. I wouldn't have been able to change it. So can you get a bank account without a brick and mortar address? No. So right off the hop, what we're talking about is we're being herded into either paying rent, paying a mortgage, or having enough money outright to buy a house, which is ludicrous here on the West Coast. I disagree. I don't think that's right at all. That's ridiculous. As free law-abiding citizens, we should be able to live however we want. And if I want to live in my RV and deal with all that's involved, then I should be able to facilitate that. Yet society, and more importantly, I think it's the financial services industry, has kind of steered that out of the scope of possibilities, or have tried real hard to. And there's more areas where we hit on that. A driver's license. Try and have a driver's license here in Canada with no fixed address. It might be possible, but not easy. I couldn't find a way to do it. I eventually had to cave in and again provide my brick and mortar address. They wouldn't use a P.O. box, and they didn't like the sounds of me living in my RV. All right, fine. Yeah, sure, I got something. Here, use this. Same with a firearms license. And this is a big one. As here in Canada, the firearms license is touted as being a public safety measure. I'm on board with that. I'm actually kind of cool with the firearms licensing. Though, on the other hand, because of what I'm going to talk about, I totally understand why people in the States are saying no to it. Because it's kind of an abortion here, because I can't have a firearms license without a brick and mortar address. So unless I have some sort of relationship with the banking community or paying a landlord money, I'm not allowed to have a firearms license. What? It's like, that has nothing to do with public safety, and as far as I'm concerned, a landlord or a bank has nothing to do with my ability to safely own a firearm. It's none of their business. I think my ability to own firearms is to the safety of the rest of the Canadians, to the RCMP, and my government. That's the only groups that need to be involved in such a thing, and I accept the involvement of all three of those groups. That makes perfect sense to me, and I'm happy with that. I like the training, so on and so forth. But oh no, we need to know a physical address. Now, for restricted firearms, for our safe handling laws, so on and so forth, that kind of ties in. If you're living in a vehicle, you can't have a restricted firearm. People have asked me this before. How do you have restricted firearms? Really simple, you can't. Can I have a rifle or a shotgun or things of that nature? Absolutely. I can. Now, how I handle safe storage when I'm not in the RV is not something I'm ever going to talk about on YouTube, because that would have to disclose where I do that, and I'm not going to. That's just not something that's ever going to show up on YouTube. You know, if I wanted to show a gun cabinet and how I store stuff in there, I would, but I'm not going to explain a geographical location and system. Never. Never going to happen. Anyway, so we'll leave that alone. So, firearms license, can't have one of those. Not a big deal to somebody who's homeless. I'm sure that's the last thing they're worried about. Considering the price of firearms and ammunition, they won't be indulging in these little hobbies anytime soon until they get things in order. That's cool. I'm sure they're fine with that too. Internet. Isn't internet a necessity of life? Well, if you're looking for a job, it darn near is, pretty much. Can you get internet without a land address? Tough. I'm not sure you can actually do that. Now, you can get a cell phone with just cash and pay for minutes. So you may be able to get a certain amount of data. Now, when I was looking at doing this here, for me to get a reasonable amount of data to be able to surf the web, so on and so forth, I was looking over $100 a month. Somebody who's in a tough situation probably doesn't have $100 to spare on internet and phone data. That's ridiculous. They could probably barely own a phone, to be blunt. So here they are, out looking for a job, no address, but they have a phone number. No physical address, no email address, just a paper resume and a phone number on that paper resume for contact. Are you going to find a job like that? Probably not. You're probably never going to find a job. Very, very unlikely. And particularly considering the employment conditions in Canada. Partly the fault of our government. I'll go on that in part 2. I'm going to break this up into 2 parts, otherwise it's just going to be ridiculously long. So here's the catch-22. 8 words. No address, no job. No job, no address. It's really simple. If you don't have an address, you can't get a job. Pretty simple. If you don't have a job, you can't get an address. Wait a minute. There's your catch-22. No address, no job, and no job, no address. Keeps going back and forth until you solve the address part. And that's the, unless somebody grabs, hey, you off the street, I'm going to give you a job. Do you want one? And he says yes, and he's willing to put up with inconsistencies with him while the guy gets himself a place to live, be it somewhere to bathe regularly and get proper sleep and be able to have an alarm to get up in the morning at the proper time or whatever shift they're working. To get all these things going, that employer is going to have to be willing to put up with that. There are actually employers that do that. There's one guy that did that, literally heard of 2 guys kind of in tough shape and said, I'll give him a job. Kudos to him. What an awesome guy. I'd love to buy him a beer and shake his hand. Love to. The other way to fix this problem is give them an address. Give them somewhere to live. Give them the rudimentary things to survive and a place to call their own, to have their stuff, and get themselves back in order. That's really the only way to do it. And again, this is where microhousing would be perfect. It's effectively the space I live in is probably smaller than what most would consider microhousing. It's completely doable. You know what? I eat healthy. I live healthy. I'm fine with a long work day because housework's simple. It's not like I have to come home and cut the lawn or whatever. If I work a 12, 13, even 14-hour day, I can come home, make dinner, crash. Oh, got to do the dishes. Okay, that's 5 minutes. Hey, what about that lawn? Don't have one. Need to do the vacuuming. Don't got too much to vacuum. Done. So you know what? If you're working a lot, living like this is perfect. It just is. It's so simple. No BS. There you go. So I think the point I really wanted to really hit on at this point is there's no way for them to get off the street without help of some kind. It's just not going to happen. And I hear a lot of people saying, well, they put themselves in this situation, they'll have to get themselves out of it. You know what? That isn't going to work. It's just not. Like I say, the catch-22. It's true. That's real. Try it. I challenge anybody to go out with a resume, even with your credentials, if you have decent credentials, and tell them you're homeless and don't have an address and don't have internet, but you need a job. Good luck. Good luck. You know, maybe if you're some computer science wizard or something like that, and they figure you're just a little bit off kilter and that's the way you've decided to live, they might still hire you because they think you're smart. Maybe employers like that. But most entry-level employers are going to look at that and go, nope, no thanks. So these people need help. They just do. And NIMBYs aren't helping. We need to deal with them somehow. And, yeah, people should get a say of what goes on in their community to a certain level. But at a certain point, when you exceed the boundaries of the property you own, do you have any right in opening your yap? Well, when it's people that need help, no. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Anyway, in part 2, I'm going to talk about what I think are some solutions, but that's it for part 1. Sorry if it was kind of a dreary and dreadful video, but I see this as a growing problem. Quite bluntly, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, to be honest. I really, really... I'll explain what I think the conditions are in part 2, but this is only going to get worse, so we need to start thinking out of the box when it comes to how we live. Renting an apartment, owning a house, or whatever is falling outside the ability of even above average Canadian jobs. So we need to start looking elsewhere on how to live. Sorry, but that's how it is. Anyway, that's it for part 1 from Vancouver Island. Have yourself a great day.